Today, there are maybe a little over 300 drive-in theaters left in the United States, and most of them are playing the same stuff you see at the multiplex. Here in Phoenix, we actually only have one left. Now, back in the day, though, the drive-in was a bizarre beast. The drive-in was the cultural melting pot of B-movies, hosting horror films, teenage comedies, and rebellious action films full of sex, violence, and violent sex. It was a time when the most prolific filmmakers were working on the cheap and producing some of the most twisted shit any human brain has ever come up with. Seriously, some really fucked up shit. Forget Eli Roth and Rob Zombie. Folks, tonight I bring you Russ Meyers. Here's your damn rant show, Daddy-O. Greetings, and welcome to Adam's Film Rants, a souped-up hot rod and an information superhighway full of puke green Priuses. Or Prius-I. Whatever. I'm your host, E. Adam Thomas, and tonight I'm bringing you a film that most of you have probably never heard of, but if you're a fan of folks like John Waters, Quentin Tarantino, or Michael Bay, you owe it to yourself to see where some of their inspiration came from. A Russ Meyers film from 1965 called Faster Pussycat, Kill, Kill. Made on an estimated budget of $45,000, which is less than it takes to shoot a local used car commercial today, FPKK is a torrid tale of lust, greed, and gears. Three strippers with a criminal past go cruising for excitement and thrills, despite the fact that they don't even fucking like each other at all. Not sure how that dynamic came together. They happen upon a couple of kids in the desert just trying to test out their wheels and decide to fuck with them, challenging the guy to a desert race. When the preppy guy starts winning, the leader of the terror trio starts trying to make him wipe out. Not satisfied with nearly fucking up his car, the leader, Varla, played by Tura Satana, literally beats the preppy gearhead to death, much to the dismay of his whiny little girlfriend. The strippers kidnap the girlfriend, and while trying to figure out which obscure stretch of wilderness they want to strand her in, or worse, they come upon a creepy old pederast in a wheelchair and his muscle-bound son, who calls to mind Lenny from Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. The old fart was crippled trying to save some girl from being hit by a train or something, and now wants to revenge against all females. He also has a huge sum of money from the settlement after his accident, and the strippers decide that they need to make a try for a cash grab. Sound familiar? The poor girlfriend, Linda, tries a couple of times to escape from the Hell Sisters and the creepy old perv, but then in walks the unlikely hero of the piece, his other son, who isn't mentally challenged. Eventually, after a nice luncheon of fried chicken and whiskey, an effervescing fountain of steamy near sex and gruesome almost violence erupts. Now, this is not a failing of the filmmakers, but rather the stringent controls on what you could or could not show in a film at the time. This was an interesting time in the history of motion pictures. The Hays Code, which was basically a censorship board, was still forcing filmmakers to make all movies like a goddamn Disney movie. No overt sexuality, no cursing, and very muted violence. Now, by the mid-60s, we were facing a world where that kind of narrative was no longer relevant to almost any of the viewers, who were living in a reality where the most popular president in recent history was murdered live on TV, Frank Sinatra was losing ground to Elvis and the Beatles in a popularity contest, and the Russians were one Khrushchevian temper tantrum away from pepper spraying the entire Western Hemisphere with hydrogen bombs. It was a time where everyone just wanted to fuck, fight, and get totally stoned off their ass. Now, this is this is by far not the most groundbreaking or important film of that era. It's a sensationalist, nihilistic, cartoonishly absurd exploitation film. And that's all it set out to be. Russ Meyer wasn't a visionary, but he knew how to make a movie that would get asses in seats, to live vicariously in a world where humanity was a precious and rare commodity, and the rule of the day was lawlessness and thrills at any cost. What's amazing about this cheap, low-budget, poorly acted little pulp film is how amazingly watchable it is. Even 50 years later, the characters you're meant to hate, you enjoy hating. And the two characters who are ultimately the most likable and decent manage with difficulty to win the day. The film craft itself is exactly what you would expect. The cinematography is rough. The sound mix is at times overwhelmed with cheesy action music, and a lot of the acting is rough to say the least. But on the whole, it still manages to suck you in and keep you watching. At first out of sheer curiosity, and then ultimately because you want to see the bad guys get their shit fucked hardcore. I think one of the things that pisses me off about a lot of action films today is how underwhelming the comeuppances of the bad guys end up being, largely because they're buried under layers of CGI and sequel teasing. If the first Die Hard were to be made today, Hans Gruber would have lived to come back in the next film, and that would have ruined the whole fucking movie. This movie doesn't pull that shit. Warts and all, this movie does exactly what it set out to do. That's all I ask of a film. Just tell the story and try to tell it well. On to the rantometer. For artistic, I'll give Faster Pussycat a 3. Because it's a cheap-ass film, but Russ knew how to use the scenery well. Coolness gets a 4. Taking into account the era, with just a little more money, tighter script, and at least one bankable star, this could have actually been the Pulp Fiction of the 60s. Originality gets a 4 as well. Suckitude does get 2 blades. Because it is a flawed film technically, and a lot of the acting is a little hard to get through. Still, with a total score of a 9, it is more than worth the watch if you love tits, fast cars, and a spotlight on one of the most tumultuous times in recent human history. Remember, we're always hoping to hear from you here at Film Rants. Email me at filmrantseat@cox.net, comment on this video here on YouTube, or just look us up on Facebook at www.facebook.com/filmrantseat. Excuse me. And don't forget to share the fuck out of this video. If nothing else, it'll help me pay for my asthma medication. No telling what I'll do next week. Maybe a horror film, maybe a western, maybe Casablanca. Tune in and see. Have a good night. Take care. Angry Men Reviews. Many fucks said, no fucks given.
Fuck 'em, kill 'em, and eat 'em, boys. Go ahead.
My nipples are so hard now.